Damon Johnson had always believed that the tech industry was a place where everything could be earned with hard work, sharp intellect, and a willingness to take risks. As the CEO of Valiant Technologies, a company worth $500 million, he had seen it all: the sleepless nights, the tough decisions, and the constant battle to stay ahead of competitors. He was a self-made man, proud of his journey from a small startup to an industry leader. Damon's empire was built on trust, loyalty, and strategic alliances. In a world dominated by corporate sharks, he had always considered himself the benevolent ruler, someone who rewarded loyalty and fostered growth within his company. His partners, Alan Carter and Monica Evans, had been with him from the beginning. Alan was his business partner, the one who shared his vision and had helped him navigate the complex landscape of the tech world. Monica, his executive assistant, was more than just an employee. She was the one who knew everything about his schedule, his personal life, and even his deepest fears. Together, they made up the trifecta of success that had pushed Valiant Technologies to the top. But the glittering world Damon had built was about to shatter. It was a crisp fall evening. The sky a deep shade of blue that seemed to echo the serenity of the corporate building behind him. Damon had just finished a long day of meetings and was looking forward to heading home. The Japanese investors were arriving the next day to finalize the $400 million merger that would take his company to new heights. It was the deal that would secure his legacy, and yet, as he walked to his sleek black Tesla, a nagging unease settled over him. The parking lot was eerily quiet, the usual hum of the city's nightlife muffled in the distance. The bright lights from the building illuminated the dark shadows around him, making the night feel unusually still. Damon paused, his hand resting on the door handle of his car, feeling an inexplicable chill run through him. He tried to shake it off. After all, he had everything he wanted: a successful company, respect, wealth, and the admiration of his peers. What could possibly go wrong? Then he heard it: "Shut up, and don't say a word." The voice was high-pitched and sharp, cutting through the silence of the night like a knife. Damon froze, his heart skipping a beat. He turned around, his instincts alert. The voice had come from inside his car. He scanned the dark parking lot. Nothing. Confused, Damon stepped back from the car, looking around. It was late, but surely someone had to be there messing with him. Was this some kind of joke? He glanced at his watch. 10:45 p.m. Too late for anyone to be lurking around. But just as his thoughts swirled, he saw something that made his blood run cold. There, sitting in the backseat of his Tesla, was a small black girl, no older than 7. Her curly hair framed her face, her eyes wide with fear but also a strange determination. She was dressed in a worn hoodie and jeans, her appearance starkly contrasting with the luxury of the car. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was something unnerving about her, something intelligent in her gaze that didn't belong in the world of corporate power Damon inhabited. Damon's confusion deepened. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low but firm, trying to mask the unease creeping up his spine. The girl didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at him, her eyes searching his face as if weighing him, trying to determine something. "How did you get in here?" Damon asked again, his tone sharpening, a flicker of concern rising in him. He tried to keep his voice steady, but the oddity of the situation made it hard to remain calm. The girl hesitated. Then she spoke, her voice quieter but urgent. "Your partner and his blonde wife," she said, pointing toward the building behind him. "They said you'd be here now." Damon's heart skipped a beat. Partner? Blonde wife? She couldn't know about them. But somehow the girl did. He froze, a chill settling over him. His mind raced. Marcus Carter, his longtime business partner, had been by his side for 15 years. Monica Evans, his trusted executive assistant for nearly a decade, knew his every move, his every plan. These two people had been his closest allies, the ones who helped him navigate the complexities of the business world. But now, standing before him, this girl, this stranger, was telling him something he couldn't ignore. "They're planning to take it all from you," the girl continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tomorrow, you won't own anything anymore." Damon blinked, his mind reeling from the weight of her words. Was this a prank? Was someone trying to scare him? No, something in her voice told him this wasn't a game. This was real, too real. "How did you know this?" Damon asked, his voice strained, his grip on the car key tightening. The girl's eyes softened for a moment, but her voice remained firm. "I saw them talking. They've been planning this for months. They said you'd be out of the picture once the deal goes through." She paused. "And you're going to sign the papers tomorrow. They said you'd sign without even reading them." Damon stood still, his mind working overtime, processing the shock. Marcus and Monica? He trusted them with everything. And now, a street kid was telling him that they had been planning his downfall. His thoughts scattered, but one thing became clear. He couldn't afford to ignore this. He had to investigate, and he had to act fast. "What's your name?" Damon asked, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "Lila." Layla, the name echoed in Damon's mind, and for some reason, it stuck with him. "Are you going to turn me in?" "To the police?" Layla asked, her voice small but full of fear, as though she had been waiting for him to react in a certain way. Damon shook his head. "No, Lila, you might have just saved everything I've built." He paused, his mind already shifting into action. "But I need to know why you're doing this." Lila didn't answer directly. Instead, she simply stared at him, her eyes filled with quiet wisdom that didn't belong to a child her age. Her words from earlier ran through his mind. "When you see someone getting stepped on, you help, because next time, it could be you." Damon's confusion melted into something else: recognition. This was no ordinary warning. This was a cry for help, an unlikely ally standing before him, ready to turn the tide in his favor. And now he had to listen. The next morning, Damon found himself unable to sleep. His mind replayed every word Lila had said. The idea that Alan Carter, his trusted business partner for 15 years, and Monica Evans, his loyal executive assistant, were plotting against him seemed impossible. They had been by his side since the beginning. Alan had been his rock, and Monica had handled his schedule and personal affairs with precision. But now, everything was in question. As the sun began to rise, Damon sat in his office, staring at the computer screen. He had to dig deeper. This wasn't just a small glitch. This was a corporate conspiracy. He wasn't going to let it go. His empire, his legacy, couldn't be taken from him by people he had trusted his life with. Damon's thoughts were interrupted by a message on his phone. It was from Lila. "I overheard them again. They're moving fast. Alan's already set up the meeting with the Japanese investors. Tomorrow's your last chance to stop them." The urgency in her message sent a shiver down his spine. Damon had to move quickly. He grabbed his jacket and made his way to the underground parking garage of his building, determined to find the evidence he needed before the deal went through. Damon's first instinct was to confront Alan and Monica directly, but something told him to wait. He had been burned before by people he thought were his friends. Instead, he decided to bring in an expert, Jackson Brooks, a former private investigator who had worked with him in the past. Jackson was known for his sharp instincts and his ability to uncover hidden secrets, no matter how deeply buried they were. Within hours, Jackson was sitting across from Damon in his office, his weathered face reflecting years of experience in handling high-stakes investigations. Jackson was in his late 40s, with graying hair and a hawk-like gaze that seemed to never miss a detail. "So you believe this, child?" Jackson asked, leaning forward. His voice was rough but calm, like someone used to hearing outlandish stories, but never ignoring a lead. Damon nodded. I didn't at first, but she's been right about too much. She knew things she shouldn't. It's the only lead I have. And now, it looks like Alan and Monica are involved in something bigger than I could have imagined." Jackson scratched his chin, then began typing on his laptop. "All right, I'll start digging into their accounts. But we need to keep things discreet. If they're as deep into this as you say, the last thing we want is for them to catch wind of what we're doing." As Jackson worked, Damon couldn't shake the thought of Lila, this young, intelligent girl who had warned him of the betrayal. He knew she came from a rough background, her dirty clothes, the way she carried herself with a quiet determination, and the wisdom beyond her years. But why was she involved? What was her motive? It wasn't until later that day that Lila reached out to Damon again. Her message was simple, but it hit him like a bolt of lightning. "They think you're stupid, but you're not. Watch them closely. They think they have you cornered. They're wrong." Damon felt a mixture of anger and admiration. This child, who had seen so little in life, had more clarity and insight than most adults. She wasn't just helping him with information, she was teaching him how to survive in a world that often preyed on the weak. That evening, Damon sat in his office, his eyes fixed on the screen as Jackson ran through the data. They were tracing the money, the secret accounts, the offshore transfers, and the irregular bonuses. Everything pointed toward one thing: fraud. "Got it." Jackson's voice broke the silence. Damon stood up, his heart racing. Jackson had found something. Alan and Monica have been siphoning off funds for years. It's all here: fake contracts, illegal transfers, and a network of shell companies. This isn't just corporate fraud, Damon. This is money laundering. Damon's mind was reeling. For years, he had trusted these two people with his life's work. Alan had helped him grow the company, and Monica had been the one to keep everything in order. But now they were part of a scheme to take it all. Lila's voice echoed in his head. "They think you're stupid." No, Damon wasn't stupid. He had built this company with hard work and sacrifice, and he wasn't about to let it go down without a fight. The day had arrived. Damon Johnson stood outside the conference room at Valiant Technologies, his heart pounding in his chest. The Japanese investors were due to arrive in just a few hours, and with them, the $400 million merger that could secure his company's future. But what should have been a moment of triumph had instead become a moment of reckoning. For the last 24 hours, Damon had been unraveling a conspiracy that had taken years to build. Alan Carter, his trusted business partner for 15 years, and Monica Evans, his loyal executive assistant for nearly a decade, had been plotting to destroy him. And the most shocking part? A 7-year-old black girl, Lila, had been the one to expose it all. Lila had been right. They had been plotting against him. The money laundering, the shell companies, the fraudulent contracts, everything was laid bare in front of Damon. And now, the time had come for him to face the two people who had been like family to him. They had trusted each other, laughed together, and celebrated victories as a team. But none of that mattered anymore. Betrayal had already won. Damon took a deep breath, then pushed open the doors to the conference room. Alan and Monica were already seated at the table, looking confident, almost too confident. Alan, dressed in his usual expensive suit, was smiling as if he had already won. Monica, sitting beside him, exuded a calm demeanor, her hands folded neatly in front of her. "Good to see you, Damon," Alan said with a smile, standing up and extending his hand. There was no warmth in his voice, just the hollow sound of calculated professionalism. Damon didn't shake his hand. Instead, he walked to the head of the table and stood there, his posture strong and unwavering. Alan and Monica exchanged a quick glance, but neither spoke. The tension in the room was palpable. "You know why we're here, don't you, Damon?" Monica asked, her voice calm but with a hidden edge. Damon nodded, his eyes locking onto hers. "I know exactly why we're here, Monica. I know about the money laundering, the shell companies, and the fraudulent contracts. I know that you've been planning to destroy everything I've built for years." Monica's face faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered, flashing Damon a fake smile. "Damon, you're mistaken. You've misunderstood everything. This is a perfectly legitimate business move. The merger is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to this company." But Damon wasn't listening anymore. His mind was too far ahead, focusing on the truth he had uncovered. He pulled out his phone and connected it to the projector in the center of the room. The screen lit up with bank statements, transfer receipts, and detailed documents showing how they had funneled millions out of the company into hidden accounts. The evidence was clear, irrefutable. Alan's face turned pale as the images flashed on the screen. Monica's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure panic. "You think you can still talk your way out of this?" Damon's voice was steady, but filled with an edge of cold fury. "I've been working with Jackson Brooks, and we've tracked everything. The money, the accounts, and your conversations. You never thought I would find out, did you?" Monica stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You have no idea what you're doing, Damon. You'll ruin everything. This deal is the only way forward for the company." Damon raised his hand, silencing her. "Don't. It's too late for that." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of the evidence hanging heavy in the air. Alan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had always thought he was the smarter one in the room. He had always believed that Damon's trust and naivety were his greatest weaknesses. But now, those same weaknesses were about to destroy him. "You've been planning this for months," Damon said. "But what you didn't count on was Lila." Monica's eyes narrowed. "Who? What are you talking about?" Damon smiled, the sense of victory rushing through him. "Lila, the little girl you both underestimated. She knew everything. She heard you talking. She warned me about your plans. And that's how I got the evidence I needed." Alan's face twisted in disbelief. "A child? You're letting a child ruin everything we've worked for?" Lila's name seemed to break something inside Alan, and Damon could see the panic creeping into his once confident demeanor. Damon didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a recording device, pressing play. The sound of Alan's and Monica's voices echoed through the room, revealing their betrayal in crystal clarity. "Jonathan is a sentimental idiot. The day after. Tomorrow he'll have to look for another job and we'll get everything." The voices of both Alan and Monica sounded almost gleeful, the betrayal clear in every word they spoke. Lila had saved him, not just by providing the information, but by giving him the time he needed to plan. She had been the key to this whole operation. Without her, Damon might have been caught off guard, blind to the treachery happening right under his nose. The conference room was silent for what felt like an eternity. Damon Johnson stood at the head of the table, the weight of the betrayal still pressing down on his chest. He had been blindsided by those he had trusted the most. Alan and Monica too. People he had considered family had plotted to steal everything he had built, everything he had sacrificed for Dot, but now the truth was out. Their masks were off, and the evidence Damon had gathered was too solid to deny. Alan shifted nervously in his seat, his once smug demeanor now replaced by panic. His eyes darted between Damon and the projector screen, where the evidence of his wrongdoings was laid bare. Monica, who had always appeared poised and collected, was now trembling, her hands gripping the edge of the table as she tried to keep her composure. Damon watched them both, his mind already calculating the next steps. The betrayal was personal, but the business side of it needed to be addressed with precision. They had tried to ruin him, to take everything he had worked for, but Damon wasn't going to let them get away with it. "You're both going to face consequences," Damon said, his voice calm and authoritative. "But what happens next is in your hands." Monica finally spoke, her voice laced with desperation. "Damon, you don't understand. This was never about you. It was about securing the company's future. We were doing what was best for everyone. Damon's eyes locked with hers. No, Monica. You were doing what was best for yourselves. You thought you could hide behind a business merger, but the truth is out. You've been stealing from me for months. I trusted you, and you turned that trust into a weapon. Monica's face drained of color. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled. I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. Alan convinced me that this was the only way. Alan chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. Don't blame me for your mistakes, Monica. You knew exactly what we were doing. You were just as complicit as I was. The realization that both of them had planned his downfall together hit Damon like a punch to the gut. He had spent years building relationships with people he thought he could trust, only to have it torn apart by greed and deception. But there was no room for sentimentality now. You're both going to prison, Damon said. I'm done. I've already contacted the authorities. They'll be here soon. A cold silence fell over the room. The police would be arriving within the hour to arrest Alan and Monica for embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy. Damon had all the evidence he needed, and there would be no escaping the consequences. It was finally over, but as the weight of it all began to sink in, Damon realized something else, something that had been growing inside him ever since that fateful moment in the parking lot when he met Lila. She had been his unlikeliest ally. The one person who had seen the truth when everyone else had been blinded by their own ambition. She had risked everything, her safety, her place in the world, to warn a stranger about a betrayal. And now she had helped him bring the truth to light. Damon turned to look at her, standing quietly beside him in the corner of the room, her eyes fixed on the floor. Despite the chaos unfolding around them, she remained calm, collected, and entirely unafraid. Lila, Damon said, his voice softer than before. You saved everything. You didn't just save my company, you saved me. Lila looked up at him, her expression serious but satisfied. I just did what needed to be done. You're not so different from me, you know? We both see things that others don't. It's just a matter of knowing what to do with that knowledge. Damon smiled, a deep sense of gratitude swelling inside him. He had been blind to the power of trust, and it had almost cost him everything. But now, he knew the value of having someone who could see through the lies. Someone who would stand by you when no one else would. I'm adopting you, Lila, Damon said, his voice steady but full of resolve. You're not just my ally anymore. You're my family. Lila's eyes widened, and for the first time, Damon saw a small smile break through her serious demeanor. You mean it? I do, Damon said. You've already given me more than anyone else has in years. You saved me, and now it's time to make sure you're safe. You deserve more than what this world has given you. Months passed since the dramatic showdown in the conference room. Damon Johnson's life had finally returned to a semblance of normalcy, but he knew that things would never be the same. Alan Carter and Monica Evans were both behind bars, facing serious charges for their roles in the elaborate money laundering scheme. With them out of the way, Damon had regained control of Valiant Technologies, which was now running stronger than ever. Lila, now officially adopted by Damon, had become a vital part of his life, both in the office and at home. No longer the street-smart child she once was, Lila had flourished under Damon's care. She had returned to school, excelled in her studies, and become more than just an ally. She was his daughter. The transformation in her was nothing short of remarkable. Yet, as the months went by, something gnawed at Damon. Despite everything that had happened, there was still a lingering question that refused to leave his mind. Why had Lila risked so much to help him? She was a child with nothing to gain, and yet she had put herself in harm's way to expose the truth. Was there something more to her story, something Damon had missed? It wasn't until one quiet afternoon that Damon's questions would be answered. He had just finished a conference call when he received a package, an old, worn-out envelope from a law firm in the city. Confused, Damon opened it. Inside was a set of old documents, birth certificates, and photographs that seemed to have no connection to him. But the last document caught his eye. It was a family tree. Damon's eyes widened as he traced the names on the sheet, recognizing a few. But there was one name that stood out: Josephine Miller, his late aunt, a woman Damon had lost touch with more than 30 years ago. The more he read, the more stunned he became. Josephine Miller was not just an aunt. She was Lila's grandmother, her biological grandmother. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Lila was his family. Damon felt a rush of emotions: disbelief, confusion, then a deep sense of gratitude and relief. The little girl who had helped him, who had risked everything to save him, wasn't just some random child. She was family, his blood. Damon couldn't wait to share the news with Lila. He walked into the living room, where she was, reading a book. The moment she saw him, she immediately sensed something was different. "Dad, what's wrong?" she asked, setting the book aside. Damon sat down beside her, holding the documents in his hand. "Lila," he said softly, his voice full of emotion, "I have something important to tell you." Lila's expression softened, and she leaned in, curious. "What is it?" Damon handed her the family tree, pointing to the name at the top. "This is Josephine Miller, my aunt. But what you don't know, Lila, is that she was your grandmother." Layla stared at the papers in disbelief, her eyes widening. She looked up at Damon, her voice trembling. "You mean we're really family?" Damon nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. "Yes, Lila, we're family. You've always been a part of my family, even if we didn't know it. I should have known. Your grandmother always talked about you, about how smart and brave you were. I never realized just how much she protected you, even from afar." Lila's eyes welled up with tears as she wrapped her arms around Damon. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew there was something special about us." For the first time, Damon felt like the missing piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. The betrayal and loss of the last few months had been devastating, but they had also brought him closer to his roots, closer to the family he never knew he had. As months passed, Damon and Lila's bond grew stronger. Together, they weathered the aftermath of the betrayal and focused on building a new future, one founded on trust, loyalty, and family. Valiant Technologies had grown stronger, and Damon knew that the real legacy wasn't just in the company he had built, but in the family he had rediscovered. One evening, as Damon watched Lila prepare for her college entrance exams, she turned to him and said, "Dad, do you ever think about what Grandma would have said if she were here?" Damon smiled softly. "I think she'd be proud of you. And I think she'd be proud of us for building something bigger than business. Something that lasts." Lila grinned, holding up her A+ report card. "Then I think I've made her proud." Damon's heart swelled with pride. Not just for the company they had built together, but for the family that had come from the ashes of betrayal. As for Alan and Monica, their names were no longer part of Damon's future. They had disappeared into the past, forgotten and exiled. There lives a footnote in the grander story of Damon and Lila, a story of how betrayal turned into family and how a 7-year-old girl had saved not just a business, but a legacy.